2008 CTS.
Hey man, disconnect that battery.
Well, that was easy. For now, I'm just going to remove this breather hose and leave the box. This project's going to be a bit interesting because I had the timing chain and gear done approximately 3 years ago. And that took care of the codes. And now the codes are back. And the garage is telling me that it's going out of time on the lower end of the RPM range. And what I've been noticing is when I take off on a level surface, the car seems fine. But if I take off on a slight grade or going up a hill or passing a car and get on it a little bit, the engine seems sluggish and it's been consuming more fuel than normal. And what I've been doing is I just shift down when I go up a hill or pass a car, get the engine in a higher RPM, and it shoots off like a rocket, which is a good indicator that one of these phasers is stuck in the advanced mode. So I'm going to check that first, then if I need to go further, I'll remove the box, front cover, look at the chains. Oh, got a little hose right here. The other end of this, just pull it out from the valve cover. Both sides, 18 millimeter. This here is supposed to be mounted with some plastic clips. Apparently it's been broken from when they took it apart before. You'll see two plastic clips holding that shroud on, and it just clips in the back. And there's a little noogie here where you separate the plastic. Pull that up a bit, then get underneath this piece and pull your clip out. Little pin slides. Slide it over, pull out. The other end has the same type of release. No need to remove the bracket. It just slides off the bracket, and then we'll move it aside. And this one as well has the same type of release that's into the valve cover. Same style release. Just pull it over. Remove the vacuum for the brake booster. Then from the intake. Then from this canister, little blue tab, push in, pull out. Then remove the whole unit. Right here at the throttle body, we've got a coolant line. And you may get some coolant that comes out of there. There's an electrical connection under the throttle body, a little hard to get to, so I'm going to remove the intake and then maybe I can get to the underside of it. I think it's ready to be removed. Start with these bolts here, and I'll show you the hardest one. 13 millimeter. And those bolts are located right back here, a little bit difficult to get to. I've already got it loosened. And you just pull it up, tilt it backwards a little bit, jiggle it around, and it will clear. You can also lift up on that a little bit if you need to. Here's the bolt I just took out. And then there's a bracket right here with two bolts that gotta come out. that are also 13 millimeter. Two 10 millimeter bolts on this bracket. Alright, that loosened it right up. Okay, these 4 bolts are all the same size. And this one's a little shorter, which came out of there. And this one's even shorter yet, that came from the back near that bracket. Alright, so I'm going to flip it over because I still got that wire hookup on there, which is right there. So it appears we would pull this locking pin outward. Nice! And then push inward on something. Oh, right here maybe. Ah! The pin came out! Well, I can't find it at the moment. But, something doesn't look right here. Oh look, it's another locking pin or something. This one's becoming annoying. What's it need? There. You do have to push in on that. For some reason it wasn't working for me. Let's see if it'd be alright without that locking mechanism. Look, it clicked in. We're good. That's just an extra cautionary. Well, if your car quits, you know where to go, right? You know, at first glance, I'm like, what's this? I mean, it appears it's been ripped out, but there's a plug in there. And they got this soft stuff in here. What kind of stuff is vehicles made out of these days? Foam rubber? Around heat? Oh well, that's not to be concerned with. Next, valve covers. Remove the coil packs and connectors. The easiest way I've found with these connectors is you push on this side to get it started. And then you continue pulling over here as you're pulling it off. I think they'll actually just pull right out for you. See that? You get it all the way out and then the plug will release. Once more. $10 mil. Nice. Oh yeah. Once more. Now you can lay them out in order if you like. Now, we got to get these wires pulled back. I see a wire tie here. There's something holding it up here. Oh, they're pop outs. Oh, see that? Just pull it right out. This engine is direct injection. So here's all the fuel lines. There's no fuel rail in the road, so I won't have to remove the fuel line. So I put a bungee cord on these wires. Just makes it a little bit nicer working. And the valve cover bolts are 10 mil. Get 2 bolts back there, 3 across the front, total of 13. Gently pry up in several places. Or one. Huh. Maybe there's 14 bolts. No, there's only 13. I just had to loosen one a little bit. It was just the wires holding me up. I would say this man changed the oil often. I'd like to get a shot of these ports. I've already looked in there. They're pretty built up with carbon. The chain is tight, but that's to be expected because when the motor was turned off, it was in motion in this direction, so it's tight. Just like a bicycle chain. Tight up top, loose on the bottom. Now if I was to turn the engine backwards just a little bit, I'd probably get some slack in there. But overall, it's looking good. So to test here, get yourself a wrench on the squared part of the cam, and when I turn it this way, both should move. This should not move and that stays still. So that's locked, just like it's supposed to be. When there's no oil pressure, there's a pin that engages and locks it, and that's locked. And then when you get oil pressure, the pin releases and then variable timing is engaged. There's a good example that this is working properly. It's also an example of when you turn the engine back a little, how much slack you get. That might be enough. In fact, I think that is enough to throw a code. And the garage was telling me bank 1 is the one that was out of time. Look how loose that is. So it's under 30,000 miles. 3 years. Is the garage responsible for this? They have a warranty. So they didn't think it was the timing chain and gear because they just did it 3 years ago, which I agreed with. Then they told me the reluctor wheel may have shifted, may have slipped a little bit, putting this timing out. I did some research and I'm like, well, wouldn't that affect both sides? And he said there's 2 reluctor wheels. I did some more research and found out there's only 1 reluctor wheel, which means 1 reluctor wheel would put both sides out. This one only has 1 side out. So somebody is pulling the wool. So we'll check the other side. I'm going to remove this cap, put that wire right over top, like such. There we go. Uh-oh, something's got us. I found 2 bolts way in the back. Now this wire's got me. So to gain a little slack, you need to remove this. Press that into your click. Right out. Same deal. Tight. This side is much cleaner. Uh-oh. Nope, it's locked. Now that's not fair, because I might be pulling in the tensioner, creating that slack. That doesn't really mean the chain is slack. I'd have to have the whole front off to know for sure. I'm just checking if that's locked in. Comparison of the covers. Extreme lack of oil. And I do believe this is the updated version gasket with the 2 little holes for venting to the crankcase, which was supposed to be an improvement. I don't think I like it. And this one here had these 2 bolts in the back. It's a little bit bigger. That's why I was having trouble getting it off. So, given this condition, there's a good chance this side chain is stretched due to lack of lubrication. Before I go any further, I'm going to turn the engine over, see if that reveals anything. Push in on the tab underneath. 10 mil bolt. Safekeeping. Okay, for this little pump, we got a 10 mil right in here. And on the other side is an 18 mil. This is the bracket that's got to be removed to get this off and this off. And the bolt is right underneath. And it's a 13 mil. That just slides right off that stud. Now we can lay all this aside for the power steering bracket. The more bolts you can put back, the more headaches you won't have later. Some more electrical connections. Nice. Got me a little catch can. A little bit twisty. That's not working. Just needs a little bit of influence. Now you just break it all the way around. It's seized on there is what the deal is. So you want to break it all the way around. She's shooting water now. And then give it a little twisty. Then we've got two 10 mils there. That will release that. A little bit of motivation. Now you can either leave the bolts with the unit, which is excellent, or just put them back there for safekeeping. Remove this bracket, 18, 13. This bolt was not holding the bracket, but needs removed anyway because it goes into the block. We'll rid these belts with a breaker bar into the square slot. Release tension. Remove the belt. $15 mil. I would lay these aside with their corresponding bolt. Passenger side, driver side. Remove this real quick. Now we'll attack this module. There's a notch on each side that's holding it from coming up. So you just pry out on the side and get one started, and the same on the other side. Right in these slots here, there's a tab you can push in. And it allows you to move this whole bracket. So the other option is if you have a pick or a hook, you can hook on and remove these tabs behind here. And you could remove it with the module in place, and you wouldn't even have to unplug it and then let it lay on your fuse box. That gives you a lot of clearance to get to the alternator bolts. Ideally, it'd be great if you could take off the bracket and the alternator all in one piece. But I believe you got to get the alternator out of the way first to get to one of the bolts for the bracket. So I'm going to remove the alternator first, then the bracket. And that's a 13 mil, first bolt right here. Now this is pretty cool ingenuity. They have a slot so you don't have to pull it all the way out. See that? Got a bolt here, you can see the journal for it, and then there's one behind it, which is also 15 mil. You just reach around, feel the bolt, and line your socket up with it. Oh yeah. Now this is the time you want your battery disconnected. So here's the order the bolts came out. Top bolt, bottom back bolt. To release tension from this wire, I'm just going to pop it off, push in, pull up, little wire tie right there. I'm going to snip, and to give me some more slack. Get this up out of the way. There we go. Now we can get to the back bolt on this bracket. And here it is with a wrench on it. I believe it's a 14 mil, but I don't have one, and a 1/2 inch wrench fits it good. Oh, I think the hose has got it. All right, found a bolt right here. It's a bracket that holds this pipe. There's the bolt. All right, freed right up from the bracket. So, what I'm going to do now is the bolt I just took out, put that back. This was the 14 mil in the back. Then, we've got these two up top, long in the bottom, and then put this aside just like that. Well, without losing the bolt. Okay, I missed the base with this pulley. I should have loosened the bolts when the belt was on. No biggie. I'm just going to go against itself by putting two, push down, and then loosen this one. Same here. Reinstalled 10 mil bolts for safekeeping. Remove this idler sprocket. 15 mil. For the power steering pump, we'll use a pulley puller. And this has a couple of different sizes. And you just put it on this half here like that, around that lip. And then around this lip. Like such. And then there's this collar that goes around all of it. It holds everything together. And then you tighten it up against the shaft. And you get a wrench on here and here. I've got a 13/16 and a 5/8. It's best to use a ratchet or a socket, and you just turn against it and it pulls it off. This is the first time I've ever used one, so don't feel intimidated. I got the tool from AutoZone. It's a program where you purchase the tool, and then when you take it back, you get your money back. No charge. There you go. Now there's this bolt here that's got to be removed that goes into the housing of the front cover. Then this bracket has a bolt way back there. I'm not sure if we need to loosen that or not. So I'll get that later if we need to. Which is a 15 mil. Now we need to remove this weird looking stud. It's an inverted hex, and I don't have one, so I'm going to use vice grips, and it's holding the plate into the block. All right. I got this end so boogered up that just trying to take the nut off worked. There you go. For the harmonic balance bolt, I suggest an impact wrench so you don't risk reversing the engine and possibly jumping a tooth on that bottom chain. Perfect. There are other methods, but this is my preferred method. I had just enough room to get an impact in there with a regular short socket. You risk breaking it, but hey, I didn't have to remove all this fan unit. But when I do the gear puller in here, I will not have enough room for the impact, so I'm just going to wrench it. So I'll be using this style puller for the harmonic balance wheel, and you want to line this up on the crankshaft, and then you want these as close to this pulley as possible to give you more pulling range. And then you got some bolts here that go through. And you use one of the holes supplied in the pulley to tighten that up, and you put another one on this side. But you see how loose that is? I don't really like that. Now in the pull kit there's different size bolts, but the shorter ones will not reach, so I might put like a spacer in here, some washers or a nut. Now I got a couple bolts right here and two there, and you want it to thread in at least a 1/4 inch or more so it doesn't strip out. And you want this to pull evenly, and you can see this side's wanting to go inside, so I'm just going to leave that a little bit loose to make it even. Get yourself a heavy duty ratchet. 3/4 socket is this size here, and it was the same size as the bolt that came out of the crank. Tighten that up. Start pulling, baby. Yeah. Pretty easy when you got the right tools. So you can see the setup here now. These bolts are threaded into these holes, and then this pulls against the shaft, pushes against the shaft for curiosity purposes. You can see how far that this is threaded in, and it's about a 1/4 inch. It's not even all the way through. This one's a little bit more. Here's the kits from AutoZone: harmonic balance puller, power steering wheel puller. Alrighty, for the front cover plate we got a sea of bolts, 13 mil. So before I remove the cover, I'm going to remove these actuators. I believe they will hold you up a bit when you try to remove the cover. And there's two on that side. And I want to lay them out in order. Don't know if that matters, but I'm going to lay them out in order. Give them a little twisty and pull. Very nice. Wow, they were easy. I don't think they would have held up anything. So the theory is, taking these cam actuators out, if you start binding up, you know it's not them. And I think it will assist, because if you leave the cam actuators in, you have to pull equally, and they can get on a bind. So with them out, If you get on a bind, you know it's a bolt. Because these here sensors, they don't go in the block. The other option, I believe this bolt here is a pusher. You can take a bolt from somewhere else, put it in there, and it helps assist pushing it out. But I'm just going to start prying it off and see what happens. Meanwhile, a truck shows up. All right, broke loose there. Broke loose here. We're getting it.
What's up, Mark?
We've got it. Yeah.
Yeah, what's up?
Woo! You want to keep all these bolts together.
Man, what are you doing to this car? Do you know what you're doing? Got 2 timing chains?
3.
3?
One here,
Yeah.
there, and there. And they were done 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
getting timing codes again.
What is it that you're doing to the car?
Well, see, these chains stretch
Right.
and make it go out of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm checking for stretched chains. So here's an overview. The chains are tight. The guides look good. Tight on the bottom. So let's do a comparison between the tensioners. I'm going to use this socket to determine the stretch. And there's very little play there. Versus this side, which is a mountain of stretch. So the garage is right. This side is out. The garage misdiagnosed the reluctor wheels. I misdiagnosed cam actuator. This chain is tight the whole way around. But remember earlier when I was creating slack? The actuator is going in and out. So that was a misdiagnose. The tensioner is doing its job, but the chain is stretched. But this side is different because I'm opposite. I'm not pulling on the tensioner side, I'm pulling on this side, creating looseness. And you see the tensioner does not move? That means the chain is loose on down. Right here where the chain comes off the guide, you can see the chain moving in there. And then I'll show you up here. You can see the looseness right there. All right, that's not moving at the moment. I'll check it after I get the chain off. Bottom actuator, that's a good amount of stretch, but I don't have nothing to compare it to. So I'll see what that is when I put the new chain on to determine how much stretch was in that chain. Now I'd like to demonstrate what happens if you go in reverse. See that? It just jumped time. Never reverse your engine. So I'll get the timing chain kit, go through this procedure, and reinstallation on part 2.